Hello. It looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. We have 4 viewers. I'm excited to welcome everyone into this live stream today. We will give it a few minutes for other people to come on in and join us. And while we're waiting, you can watch crawl on your screen.
Whitney, is this like Spaces and that like I can join it on Twitter too? Or is the live thing different from that? Okay.
You see it in Twitter, you see it in YouTube, and you see it in Instagram, though it looks like it's being potentially a little buggy in Instagram. So I'm trying to assess the technology, but let's try this again. We will just give it one more minute, everyone, for those who are listening in, for other people to have the opportunity to join. It looks like we have about 30 people so far who have joined us, 33 eyeballs, which is amazing. All right. All right, it's been 2 minutes. We have 42 eyeballs, so let's kick it off. We ready to go, Casey and Travis?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Whitney.
Fantastic. Well then, it is my pleasure to welcome everyone today. It is wonderful to be here today moderating this discussion between artist Travess Smalley and curator Casey REAS as they dive into the mythical world of Crawl, Travess's solo exhibition on Feral File. As a brief word of introduction for both individuals, Casey REAS is the co-founder of Feral File and, as previously noted, the curator of the Crawl exhibition that we're here to talk about today. Casey is an artist. He's a professor in the Department of Design Media Arts at UCLA, and he's the co-founder of the Processing Language with Ben Fry in 2001. And Travess Smalley is an artist who works with computational software to create generative systems in various forms, including computer graphics, digital images, prints, software, games, and books. He's also an educator, a professor of print media, and a critic at the Rhode Island School of Design. And we're here today to talk about his beautiful exhibition. So to kick us off, Travess will lead us through an exhibition walkthrough, which will be followed by a discussion between Travess and Casey about the show. And then in the end, we will open up to questions. So please leave comments in the platform on which you're viewing this live stream. It could be X, it could be YouTube, and I will moderate a discussion about your comments and questions towards the end of the hour. So with that, Travess, I turn it over to you.
Yeah, awesome. Whitney, thank you for the introduction. Casey, thanks for curating, and thank you both for all the kind of help through the project. I also want to amend that introduction to say I'm right now at the University of Rhode Island. That's where I'm the professor of print media, and the kind of support from the university has been humongous, like over the last few years. I also am a critic at Rhode Island School of Design, but it's like University of Rhode Island has like had a big impact on the work that I've been able to do. And so I just want to make sure to include them in this. Yeah, so what we're looking at right now is Crawl multi-level. So this is going to be maps 490, 172, 86, and 33. It is controllable with, I turn on precision mode for a second. It's controllable with touch, with mouse and by clicking, and wherever you click, you kind of move in that direction. But the way that comes most naturally for me is to use WASD keys for it, or arrow keys. It's as a kind of a way to move around it. The maps have different key commands in them. So as we move around, let's see what we can find. Uh, how crawl works is that you are this pixel in this big map, and that was kind of the basic idea. It's something that I talked about a year ago with Casey and Jeffrey Scudder too. I talked to him a lot about this idea a year ago, of this thing of you are this tiny pixel, and what it would be like to be like a pixel in a pixel rug, as this kind of thing that you could explore around. And the more I dove into that question, the more I started to think about the games that I was playing and all these kind of ways that we can explore procedurally generated spaces. So right now I have precision mode on, and I'm like right next to this blue spiral. And so depending on what you land on, there's different kinds of interactions. And the viewer is basically set up to, when you land on certain RGB colors, it kind of creates certain interactions. So for when I come on a warp, it warps me to another spot in the map. It also unlocks this blue button over here that now just lets me warp whenever I want. So it's like once you've unlocked an ability, you kind of continue to have that ability on the level, and it'll give you a little kind of notifier that's like it's on cooldown right now. Which is great because this kind of brings me over to another one. So we have red, which are these circles that appear around the map, and they're like houses or watchtowers. Um, as I started thinking about making these two-dimensional worlds, these two-dimensional maps, I thought about Flatland, this book that's like about a two-dimensional universe, and how the characters would move around this and the houses they lived in. And so when you land on red, it changes the perspective from a kind of a 4x zoom to a 2x zoom. So it's letting you kind of shoot outwards even more in it. And so you can see more. And so you have zoom in, you have zoom out. And so right now we're capped at a 2x zoom, which I don't know how legible it's going to be on the screen, but you have over in your mini map over here. Um, we're at a 2x zoom. And this is great because actually it has like all the other components are right here on the map, so I can kind of talk about them. When you land on an RGB green color, that creates spawn. And these spawn have there's like a set kind of range of different movement types and waves they can make. I was thinking a little bit of like glider guns and Conway's Game of Life, of different kinds of particle systems that shoot out. But you can see in the mini map on the bottom right, as these spawn go out, they're just exploring more and more of the map and removing the fog that covers everything. And now I've unlocked it. So I have this spawn button that I can press, and every second or so I'm allowed to kind of make another one. Um, you can also just hit R, and every time I press R, it's going to keep making new spawn. And so we've unlocked the spawn and the warp. And then the last thing you can unlock is that every level has this kind of corroded portal or door that's there. And when you come over on that, it takes the zoom all the way out to a 1x zoom and gives you the last thing that you can create, which is a worm. And so these worms kind of go out and explore. They also change black to a white color. If we do auto explore and we let it go, you'll notice that whenever you're on like a pure black tile, your speed gets reduced heavily. And so when thinking about making this kind of maze labyrinth generator, there is definitely this kind of tension of like, should I just make it impassable? Should I make it so that people can't like get through the black area, that you're kind of just stuck in this? And I kept finding that the fun was in the exploration and not as much the puzzle of getting out of it. So having black be kind of more like a mud, like this kind of thing that slows you down and is really sticky, felt like a nice in between solution for it. But the worm kind of acts as this way of continuing to explore the map, but also I can zoom out more too. But also where was that? I lost my train of thought. I was looking at the worm. It as this way of showing you what is like these kind of black muddy tiles. pixels. And so you can see now that from the particles, like all the fog is kind of clearing out in an interesting way. I'm going to zoom back in. And so this is kind of like what I've shown you so far is kind of the experience per map. Uh, on the bottom right, you have information about the seed that was used with the version of the Python script that I wrote. Every map has a title. The titles are procedurally generated based on kind of old English plant names, off of language from From Software strategy guides. It's a language that is maybe a bit based on soil and sediment, on landscape and earth, but also on kind of fantasy and roguelikes in terms of it. I tried to find language that felt aligned with a kind of a natural fossilization or something that might imply a fantasy world. So every map is kind of generating using, let's zoom out again. Every map is kind of generated using, it starts with a maze, and that maze then is kind of overlayered with different kinds of plants and fossils that can corrode the map, can corrode the maze and kind of take over. And these, while they are dark in color, they kind of still allow you to move at fast pace. There are probably around 5,000 different. Let's see. There's probably between 5 to 7,000 different kinds of items that can appear in it. And once they were used, they shouldn't have shown up again in the maps. So there's a whole process of kind of building out the set of objects that could appear in the maps as well. Okay, so if we look at this map, the next goal is going to be to get to the next floor because this is a multi-level. If I look at my mini map in the bottom right, I can see that there is that area where the watchtower was that's all red, and I know that that's there. I know that is going to. We've explored that, and because I let the spawn kind of run for so long on the bottom right, I can see that there's a stairs up, which is the cyan triangle pointing up. But what I want to find is the magenta triangle pointing down. And if I look at my mini map, I don't think it's going to be legible on the stream, but there is one magenta pixel in the top left corner of the mini map, and that's okay, so that's where the stairs are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to work my way over there, not running into things. I'm getting close. There are different kinds of gradients that can appear that will help you, that help emphasize where features in the maps are. A lot of times the mazes themselves start to form around the stairs, so you can use that as a way to kind of help find where you're trying to go. But so I'm going to put on precision mode for a second just so we can talk about this. And so now as soon as I come over here, it takes me to the next floor. And so I've loaded into the second map, which is 172. Galleria Witch Bell Scolinade. And I can move between those floors now. Every time, so this comes out of Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup and a lot of rogue-like games where once you find the stairs, you can kind of very quickly go back to any floor you were before. And Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, and I believe NetHack and Rogue, a lot of them have a search feature. So if you're I want to go back to level 11 because there was something on it, you can just type in D11 and go back to it. And so my shorthand for that is just brackets that allow you to kind of quickly move between whatever floors you've unlocked. And so
Travis, can we just for a moment, I just want to clarify, when you first enter a level, it's foggy and you see nothing except your local environment. And then the idea is you explore, and you've talked about different ways of exploring. And then the other thing I want to clarify is in Crawl, there's 512 different levels, and those levels can be combined into multi-level works. Can you say just a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. So hold on. Say about what? About the levels?
Just there's 512 levels that then can be combined into new works that are multi-level.
Sure. Yeah. So the project comes out of.
So right now we're looking at multi-level that has 4 different levels, and I guess
exactly. Yeah. And we're looking at level 172. So map 172. These is I minted 10 different maps, and I took 4 of those maps to combine together into one. And so the original generation is 512 maps that have different kind of characteristics and elements. All the maps have some features the same. Like every map has stairs that go up and down. Every map has a door. Every map has portals and spawn to different frequencies. There's different kind of quantized colors that can happen on them. There's different kinds of fills that can happen on them. There's different types of procedurally generated patterns. Some of the scripts that I used to make the pixel rugs, I have rewritten in Python so that I could apply those to the maps in this project, and with like different weights to it. In terms of trying to make like as much variety as possible in terms of what the outputs look like. So yeah, once you mint the individual maps, you can then compose the sequence, the order of the maps that you want to explore. So you can kind of set it. There's an when you're looking at it at a fully zoomed out way, when you're looking at the map and the color palette of it, it doesn't quite show what the experience of interacting with it in the game is like. So just because the colors might look similar from the fully scaled out version, when you look at them up close, there can be all kinds of textures happening. I actually noticed this yesterday when I posted one to Twitter. The way that Twitter compressed the map, it made it look pink. But when you actually zoom in and look at it up close, it's a combination of different colors that just due to Twitter's kind of compression of it completely changed how it looks like. And this micro, macro, or like just kind of the zooms that that are happening at different scales and how they change the relationship of what it is and what it looks like is fascinating. Is kind of one of the big reasons I wanted to do this project, right? Is to really have people play around with perspective and looking at these closer up. Does that explain?
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm sorry I derailed you. You were like really rolling in a good smooth way. So I think you were talking about moving back and forth between levels and where that idea came from. And here we are at a new foggy level to explore.
We're in a new foggy level. All the kind of elements of it have been locked again. So I need to find those elements again on this level to unlock them. So right now I'm going to be able to unlock 2x zoom as soon as I land on this red. Which is nice. That kind of gives me a bigger. Also, one other thing that happens when you land on the watchtower is that it extends the length of the fog clear. So all of a sudden, we're going to get a much bigger fog clear for a short time. Let's go around, see what else we can find here. Can warp around. So now warp has been unlocked. And I could keep kind of exploring this way where every couple of seconds I can press T and it's going to warp me around the map until I can find the other elements for it. One other thing we didn't talk about is that you can save out images of whatever your kind of current clear state or kind of relationship of the map is. So let me come in here and see if I can show this to you all. I'm going to have to come out of full screen for this for a second and share this, right? And so in here, it gives you a much larger mini map. It shows what elements of the map you've cleared out. And come in here. It even gives you this kind of the pathfinding of with the auto explore, like what has been explored and what was found in the cells that it was explored. This specific thing is directly a nod to Harold Cohen's early works that he did at Stanford and the kind of terrain, the numerical terrain maps of heights that were made there. And so it acts as this this one kind of way of analyzing the image or your experience through it. Okay, so I can come back in here. Yeah, so I could kind of explore around or let it explore itself. You all, is there anything that I'm missing that you want me to, that you think I should talk about in relationship to this? Oh, this is a good guy right here. Look at him.
It is good. Um, one thing I really like about experiencing this work is being able to have it run itself, the auto mode, just kind of having it in the background, and some of my attention shifts to it at different times, and then I like being able to sort of take a moment, stop that, and to be able to search it in a more direct way. And so do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, I would say the idea of like letting it play itself, that that uh, that really connects in for me into games, that sandbox games where you can just watch them play themselves, when you can watch these kind of systems kind of play out in different ways, and get to see the way that the programmers kind of built it. This is so simple in comparison to, I think, a lot of what happens in like the emergent space of games. But for me, it's like a way of taking the digital images that I make and give them a little bit of that, to like give them this little bit of a feeling of playing in another type of space. And yeah, it's I think that I think about screensavers as being an important part of the history of non-narrative abstract cinema. At least for me, they were the first kind of generative art that I saw growing up, and had a huge impact. And so having this kind of thing that can kind of be there in the background, exploring and moving, yeah, makes me think of Windows 95 and the little exploring around those mazes or the pipes, you know?
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about, well, I guess one thing to say, I just wanted to, I really am excited about the two-part generative process here. Like the first part is the building the world and the system that generates the levels, the mazes, and everything around them. And then there's the second piece of that, which is the exploration process and the way you move through that image and see it at these different scales. So in a way, it's sort of a two-step generative work. Where, like, we've talked a lot about like how to move around the mazes, all the different ways of exploring. Where do the images come from? Like, why are we sort of in this visual world? Where did that develop from? Like, you touched a little bit on some gaming and Flatland as an idea, but this world that we're experiencing right now visually, like, how did that develop?
It started with when I was in the kind of daily digital painting and scripting practice that was pixel rugs. I came across ways of using blur and threshold and high pass filters to simulate kind of a reaction diffusion pattern, right? This thing that takes things that are hard edge pixels and softens them and morphs them slowly. And in there, it very quickly was like, oh, whoa, this is like a maze. This is like a labyrinth. This is this thing, like immediately it takes this hard edge pixely thing and turns it into something that's way more morphing, and your eye kind of leads you through it in all these different ways. So it came out of that experience. It also came out of this idea of images that you could play. And so once again, thinking of mazes and labyrinths, but also there was this been this idea in game design, and I think about it specifically with this game that came out called Into the Breach. And the designers who made it, they talked a lot about the idea of all the information needed to be to play the game is present at one time. Like this idea that any kind of information you would need to be order to make that next decision is present. And so I like, you could think about that from a gameplay perspective, but I also started to think about it from a painting perspective of like when you can give the person everything at once so that they could that playing happens through watching or looking. And so I think that was kind of where the kernel of this all kind of began and started to expand. And then the more I built and the more I researched in terms of thinking about procedurally generated worlds and spaces, at looking at earlier games and looking at how roguelikes do different kind of algorithms to build out levels, I started to see it as this thing that could kind of build images in some ways similar to how pixel rugs worked, where it was just like I'm starting with like dither patterns that are overlaid on top of each other, but with a different set of rules that come out of game design. And so I think that really started to inform what it looked like. I wanted to add some nouns and objects to it, which is where all of the kind of creatures and plants and mollusks and kind of fossils come from. I wanted there to be this thing that kind of lived in it and helped kind of corrode it and give it a little bit more specificity. Yeah.
I think, I mean, when I read this, I imagine a very strong interest in maps, in mapping, in drawing, in playing games that involve like moving through or exploring different cave structures, both traditional role-playing games and also computer-based games, and much, much more. And then I think here we're in like a completely digital environment where the digital qualities, the colors, the pixels are really being emphasized. Like it's not trying to be something else. This is an imagined space that you've made that has some relationship to the natural world through the way they're being named and these sort of organic forms that appear, but it really is some other kind of space that you have sort of brought into the world that's unique, I think.
Oh, thanks. On that point about the kind of language of the imagery, earlier on when I was building this, for instance, there are all these buttons on the left-hand side, and I had them as emojis to start with. Like they were all these kind of specific objects that would be, you could press the emoji and it would do basically what's happening here. But it became very clear at a certain point that like that language just wasn't right for it. Like it needed to also exist in the same visual language as the maps themselves. And so, yeah, there are little things like that. Like they were design choices like that all of a sudden made so much more sense because of how the maps were being made. It took me a while to get to. Like I wasn't like when I was still very messy. I think one of the things, right? Like I've been working on this project for a while now, and the kind of structure of it has. At the heart of it, there is this idea of making these maps. This idea of making these explorable images, and so much of it through the process of looking at how games are made and how like levels are created. It just started to it informed it a lot. The decisions that I started of how it looked, of how you interacted with it. The elevator pitch that I've been using to talk to it, because it for so long it was so like, well, it's like this and it's like this, it's like this. The way that I explained it to people for a while though was that think about when you go to like the Metropolitan Museum of Art's website and you can kind of zoom in on an image and that kind of interaction there, and it's like what are ways of making that interacting with these images on a close scale can you change? Oh, I want to change really quickly to talk about gradients, right? So this right
really
now,
yeah.
If you're right here, this would let you know, like, oh, there's going to be a door like right around here, and sure enough, right? So I built in some shifts in color to kind of help let you know where things are. There it goes, exploring hell.
Well, I think, as somebody who's like, we're both really interested in generative art. I don't feel there's as much conversation around history of games and gaming and developing games and playing games as there might be. And when I look at this work, I know you have a podcast where you talk about that quite a bit. But I still feel it's like a conversation that I think can be more public and more acknowledged. Like I see references to games from the 1970s, from the 1980s, 90s, and all the way to the present here. It's just sort of like it's compressing this all together. And I feel it's really uniquely you. I think you've mentioned rogue and roguelike games a couple times, but this idea that every time you play the game, the level is different, that it's not sort of pre-programmed or pre-planned, but it's generated when you play the game. I think, in the age of Minecraft, where every time you enter, you're in a completely new generated world, that is something that people understand on a different level. But that is a really interesting form of generativity, an interesting ability of like bringing chance and performance into play. And could you say a little bit more about that and how it influenced you?
So one of the big, I would say the area of research that I've dealt with for the past, since like 2017, I feel like is when I started to formalize it, is this idea of emergent play and kind of when players can create inside of other people's systems. And their games. So yeah, I mean, that's maybe a separate conversation from the idea of the formal qualities of a roguelike and world generation. But is it okay to talk about like emergent play here, Casey? Do you think this is
Please.
that?
No, I think we're just flowing with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like, so yeah, I have this channel on Arena. Also, shout out to Arena. This project would not have been possible without Arena. Like Arena is my kind of creative research platform. So it's like where a lot of these ideas like kind of helped formalize what this project is. Yeah, so I have this channel on Arena called Creativity and Play. And it's about when players, when modders, when create inside of other people's systems. And I would say that this comes from a few different places. Like it came from my excitement when I found out about the speedrunning community back in like 2011 or 2012, about these people that were so good at games, and that there was this kind of mastery of it that verged on artistry, right? Where the way they moved through a level and the kind of performance of it was special. It was like worth kind of, everyone wanted to watch it, right? And so I started to kind of quantify all these different types of play that there are in terms of creativity in play. And so you have people that mod a game, right? So think of Jody's Sod, right? We think of taking the assets of a game and turning them into something else. Taking Skyrim and making every image Nicolas Cage, thinking like, or Deep Dream, Google Deep Dream. There's also modding in a sense of changing the rules. So there could be the house rules, right? House rules for how everyone plays Monopoly and what they do with free parking. But there can be the way that you only have one video game for a whole year as a kid. And so what are the kind of rules you make for it to make it feel fresh? One of the things that I find really interesting in the modding community is this idea of lore appropriate mods. So when people build mods that are kind of sticking to the narrative of a game versus like, making the dragons in Skyrim Thomas the Tank Engine, right? Like, so the people that try to extend the universe versus making their own, people that make musical instruments out of sound effects in games. Then there's like game as material, like this using games as part of your artwork. Like Simon Denny, I think, does this so well and so sharp, right? Like so many of his projects kind of take it. And even he has a dungeon project from earlier this year that kind of dives into this in a lot of different ways in terms of commenting on using games to comment on other systems that play in the world. So it's nice to kind of take that research, which I've always like through the podcast with Billy Rennekamp, Maddo, and Mitchell F. Chan, Art and Video Games, like has also been this way of kind of working through a lot of these ideas. It's nice to have a project that I've worked on that kind of engages in those in some way. And maybe mostly to the kind of aspects of games that I think lead to the most types of emergent play and creativity that can happen. I think you could say that my interest in that research possibly comes out of using Adobe for so long, right? Like, what does it mean when like so much of my artwork is coming out of this software that was made by a company, right? Like, and what does it mean to kind of own that when it's like I remember I mentioned Jeffrey Scudder earlier. I remember one of the first times that I talked to him was like a train ride back to New York, and he was talking about. It's like, Travis, you got to build your own painting software. You can't just keep using other people's stuff. You got to try this out. And I did, and it was awful. Like, I really didn't like it, but it was, I think that conversation with him was like kind of the first step in trying to position myself in relationship to when I'm using other people's software. And yeah, and that was like something we've talked about a little bit, or it's been presented a little bit, but it was cool to kind of do this project in Python. Like, I didn't use Adobe for this at all, which I'm not a great coder. So it was like a really big step. And Casey's kind of support of being like, yeah, you can do this there. You can make a high pass filter. You can make this thing in Python, was a really encouraging for me to kind of like do that. And so it's really cool to kind of be able to take this off of Adobe. And it's like, I still use Adobe all the time, but it's like, it's cool to kind of, you do this in other terms now.
Awesome. I would love to talk about the prints, because that is another essential part of this exhibition and a large part of your practice too. Did you want to switch the share to Whitney so you can more concentrate?
Totally. Yeah, of course. I'm going to stop screen.
All right. This project evolved over more than a year of us like meeting once a month. What we're seeing today, what evolved over the last few months, was completely unknown when we first started this. Like, we kind of had an agreement that pixel rugs are a very exciting project. There's a lot there, and it keeps evolving. What could be a project that sort of feels like it's in that universe, but completely unique, and also sort of pushing a new body of work. And so you began exploring, testing, feeling things, and eventually these ideas started to sort of click, and the work started to emerge. And before the crawl, before the navigable software version of this, I think you really found the way into the prints first. So what are these images that we're looking at right now?
Okay, yeah. These are screenshots, and they're screenshots from the development of Crawl. And so what I mean by that is that, when you're making a generative system, there's just thousands of outputs. And this is something that Jennifer Roberts talks about in printmaking, which is the pull, the moment when you pull that print back and you kind of see it for the first time. And I see this kind of symmetry between the pull of like relief printing on a press bed and that moment when you get to see the results of the script you wrote, that you're like looking through that folder and the images are loading in. And so the screenshots are really nice moments that, as I was looking at the outputs, I was zooming in on them and copying them and kind of being like, this is great. This moment is really nice. I want to figure out how I can emphasize this characteristic in the script as I fine tune it. Right. And I was collecting more and more of these, and it felt like, okay, how can I bring that kind of development process to the show and in a meaningful way. And so I started to experiment with taking these elements of the maps and printing them. I started with some pin plotter processes of taking mazes, and like it'll probably come up on the screen behind me at some point of trying to plot them. And then so in my job as a teacher, I teach these printmaking classes. And while my experience primarily is in the realm of digital printing, we have these etching presses, and I work with students to do relief printing. And we talk a lot about a lot of the ideas that I talk about or think about generative systems, but through the language of print. And it felt like a really nice moment. Once again, like University of Rhode Island's like kind of been really helpful in kind of experimenting this way and trying these things out. And so the first idea was like, yeah, I got really excited about 3D printing this year. And so it's like, okay, let's try doing some PLA plates where we print them out and ink them up and print those. And there's something there. Like it's a long process to 3D print a plate. It's a messy process too. And from there, it was it was like, okay, what are other kind of relief processes that we could do for this? Rubber stamps and laser engraving on Baltic birch was something that I've wanted to do for a while, and it was finally a possibility. And I was like, okay, let's give this a go. And it was immediate. Like as soon as I inked up one print and pulled it, I was like, yes, this is it. So in my kind of history of exhibiting, it's a history of printing for me. Like I've large format digital printing, UV printing, silk screen, printing on velvet with different machines. Like I've C prints, you name it. It's like that. If my exhibition history is kind of me trying out kind of contemporary forms of printing. And when you're working with a project, sometimes it clicks and you know right away. And this one is, I used mulberry paper, like a really thin mulberry paper. And I've never like, I have like, there's like Hanamulla paper. There's like certain papers that are these kind of thick, standard white papers, matte papers that I've used. And I kind of left it there. And I haven't put that much kind of thought in it. But it became very clear how nice this kind of more organic, you can see the fibers in it. You can see the kind of, it's 100% mulberry. So it's like, you can see these like little elements of the plant in the paper, which just, once again, reinforces the kind of language of the system that's being generated. It's black, it soaks through. So when you collect the print, you also get the digital negative. I also did like high resolution scans of the front and the back of the prints, because you can see the print through, like it soaks through the paper, right? It's a really, I don't know, not juicy, but it's like,
but I just wanted to like talk a little bit more about just dig into the craft there a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you understand printing. I haven't seen these in person yet, so I really want to see these in person. But I think there's this quality of working with etching that's completely different than a digital print. And the material here was really unexpected, like you said. Like you've been working a lot with these cotton thick papers, and somehow like the quality of the imagery here, like the contrast of the crunchy pixels with the organic images and the different ways you've been passing that digital information through and altering it. What is the quality of this ink that is like unique about the relief printing process?
Yeah, so it's oil based. It's it's opaque. It's I think that there's that. It starts as a raster image that's because it's pixelated, it's pretty easy to make like a replica of it in SVG, right? Where you're just kind of rastering out to the pixel basically. And so all that detail like transfers, but it also, softens a bit, because these are, the image space of these is 6.5 by 10 inches or around there, right? So it's like when you, that detail is so fine. And when you run it through the laser engraver, basically every print you make on it, you're losing information. It's one in those really fine areas. It's because also in these, and like this is a really great example in the one that Whitney has up right now, there's like this up close dither pattern that's, as you run it through more and more, it goes away. It's
well, and I think we haven't said yet that you're only pulling one print from each of these wood blocks too.
Yeah. And it's, so I had in the first two that I did, right, I was doing these tests to kind of figure out what the process was like. But then I remade the block and reprinted it so that I could get that like kind of crisp first pull from it, which is, a little bit stressful. And I'm not a print technician in any way. So it's a lot of kind of trial and error to like kind of get things the way I want them to. I have so much respect for like master printers and people that are just kind of, they make the life out of this, because it's such a amazing skill that you get only through experience and from working from other people. You can't go on YouTube and learn how to be great at it, and I have a lot of respect for it, but it's also fun to try these out and to kind of play in that space.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I want to say is like how deep you went into this project, how crafted it is, like how
Yeah.
much energy, how much passion, how much time and focus you put into this, across the prints, across the software. Like you worked on this for months with obsessive energy, and it just kept getting like refined and expanding, and ideas kept flowing, and it was incredible to sort of see that, like, as we started meeting week to week and seeing how the ideas were like evolving over the weeks.
Thank you. Thanks, Casey. And specifically, I have to thank Casey and Whitney, who, like, Lauren and Casey all as well, were kind of part of these meetings as we got closer to launch, but you all were with me every week, kind of encouraging me. And I got to thank, like, my wife, who, like, took over so much extra labor for me at home so that I could focus on this project as much as I have. I definitely lost myself in this a lot. So like a couple of weeks ago, there was the Generative Arts Summit in Berlin. And, I finished this project and basically hopped on a plane to go there. And it was really nice to kind of get to talk to other generative artists and kind of hear similar stories of like how, especially when you get close to launch of a project, how you can just completely lose yourself in it. And like your partner might be like, can you take the garbage out? And you just stare at them for like a long time because you've just been thinking about a function for it. Like you can't answer like really simple questions. And so it's like, there's like a lot of learning lessons in this too, like around that, like how to pace that. But yes, Casey, Whitney, both, like, thank you so much for the kind of weekly support through the project for me, and the encouragement, because I think there are kind of multiple times along the way where it could have been like, maybe this is it, maybe this is where we stop, and you were both like, no, keep going, and I'm so proud of it because of that. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we have been talking for about 45 minutes. So I think maybe we should transition. Whitney, are there some questions, or do you have any questions? Or
yes, there are a variety of questions. By and large around the software as opposed to the prints. So to kick things off with the software, we will start with a question from YouTube. What program are you using to make these pixel maps? What other programs have you used in the past that involve coding?
Oh, yeah, good question. So these are made in Python. They're made with the Pillow imaging library in Python and SK image library were kind of like the main really useful things. Um, I, I'm not a great coder, so it was a lot of ChatGPT conversations too of being like, I want to do this thing, and I want a function that takes in this maze that I've made and then does this to it, and kind of going back and forth with that to kind of figure out what it was. And it's been really nice because I'm kind of building out all these functions now that I can use for all kinds of ways of it making images, like ways of quantizing images to different color palettes and ways of like simplifying things down and different dither patterns that can make out of it. My background though is that I never there wasn't any CS program in my high school, and the first computer I used was Windows 3.1 and Windows 95. So already, like the terminal and command line were kind of hidden away from me. So even what programming meant, like I didn't understand for a very long time. And my parents aren't they like computers, but they're not like they didn't have any understanding of programming either. And so I came to programming pretty late, and I came to it kind of backwards, where it started using Photoshop actions for automation back in like 2010, 2009, 2010, where it was just like, I want to make these images and I can make a bunch of them if I use actions, which are these kind of samplers. Like I thought of it as like a music sampler at the time. And then it realized that like, oh, you can use image processor, which is this little JavaScript thing for Photoshop, to start to line up and sequence those samples from the actions. But then it was like, oh, I could do that, but I still can't really get random numbers. And so that led to using AppleScript, which is like Apple's like kind of natural language version of JavaScript, where it's like, tell Adobe Photoshop, open, make new document, random number 1 to 10 by random number 1 to 10. And like, and it kind of reads like natural language. So that was like a really nice introduction to programming for me. And from that, from AppleScript and the O'Reilly's AppleScript guide, I learned kind of like the basics of variables, loops, arrays, and like pieces of it that then later on I've been able to kind of scale up into JavaScript and Python. But yeah, I've been trying to write about this, just the kind of backwards approach of how I've come into programming. It was for chance. It was for the kind of getting to see what happens when I could take all these different outputs and combine them in different ways. And that's what pixel rugs are too. It's like all these functions that I have and just combining them in new ways. And then I'm always building new ones, and that I could start to add those to the process to generate new things.
Perfect. The next question from X, how long would it take to explore the entire map in auto mode?
I've had one running for 3 days, and it was a multi-level, and it would all get into the 90, like they would get like 98 to 99. I haven't had one hit 100% yet by auto explore. So I don't know. Casey, did yours ever hit 100?
No, never did. Yeah.
I've gotten close, but it's never hit it.
All right, let's have a competition.
Everyone can participate.
We have a good one from Chris.
Yeah.
Here.
Exactly. A great question.
I would still love to hear about the merge. Will the autoplay also switch levels? And if you get to the bottom of the level, does it loop around or... So there's hard caps on the top and bottom. So when you get to the bottom, it doesn't loop back around. So it comes out of, once again, like NetHack and Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, where it's like, once you go down a floor, the only thing is you can leave. Like, so I didn't build that into this. Like, I had a version of this where whenever you went on the stairs on the first level, it would just exit out of the program again. But then it made so many issues that I turned that off. But yeah, so there's a hard cap on the top floor and a hard cap on the bottom floor, but you do move between them freely. Auto Explorer will just move between them and continue to go. And that's why it's like, to get to 100%, if you have a multi-level, like, I assume it would happen at some point, but I haven't had it happen yet.
I know there were also 2 questions that were provided to us prior to today's live stream. One is related to this question about the merge. Will the auto wanderer also use the icons to jump between levels, or do they only work manually?
Is that the same question of like, does the auto explorer go between levels by itself?
Yes, the auto wanderer is what the term was. Okay. And are there any Easter eggs? Oh
yeah. I mean, if you look in the code, you'll be able to find it. Like, it's not, I didn't hide it really well. So in Minecraft, there's survival mode and there is creative mode. And so when you're in creative mode, you can kind of fly around the world. And there's like spectator mode that kind of lets you fly through it kind of super fast and kind of no clipping your way through blocks and everything. And so if you do Control and Q, Control plus Q, you start warping around really quick on your screen. Oh, I realized I'm not sharing my screen again, but yeah. It allows you to warp. There's also, if you have a multi-level and you're trying to quickly show someone something on one of the other levels, Control plus the brackets will allow you to kind of move between your levels quickly. It doesn't unlock the floor levels though. So it's like, it still hasn't like unlocked as a feature that you can move between it, but you can use Control to move between levels and Control Q to very rapidly move through the world.
Well, perfect. And now we have a question about the prints from someone who joined you in Berlin.
Oh, hey, so good to see you.
Rajunko loves the woodblock prints. The digital to analog aspect is a nice addition to the printmaking historical canon. And the question is, what was your inspiration to use woodblocks as part of your process?
Okay, so this is like the same thing. Like, what is my inspiration to use any printing process? I feel like I think that when you're an artist that makes digital images, there's this desire of seeing all the different ways that you can translate that and share that with people. And different forms of print have different kind of strengths. I was talking to a really great artist, David Lister, who's looking at different like illuminated ways of showing images right now. Like I think that there's so like as artists that make digital works, you're always thinking about how this can exist off the screen and on the screen. That was the reason that I was so excited to get to make physical rugs out of the Pixel Rug project. Like that these things that kind of exist on a screen can have this whole other life, this relationship to color and texture and living and observation and scale and getting dirty and kind of getting glare and being on the wall. And so I'm like, yeah, even in this project, right, I tried 2 other processes before I landed on woodblock, right? There was this kind of trace monotype multi-level plotter printing project that I'm still trying to figure out. There was 3D printing plates that I then ran through the relief press, and then there's wood. And it was just, when you're working on a project like this, sometimes the elements can come together and be so exciting. You're like, I got to do this. And it was really funny because in the weeks leading up to this with Whitney and Casey, like I was showing them the results, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. And then I came in with the woodblock prints, and it was like right away, like I knew it, they knew it. Like you're like, this is what it should be. They're incredibly graphic. There's an opaqueness, and once again, at that combination of the graphicness with this thin mulberry paper makes it feel really special. They feel kind of out of time in some ways too. Like in terms of when I look at them, I don't right away get an idea of when they are from or where they are from. And I like that kind of aspect of it too. And I think the printing process kind of can help with that as well.
It's such a traditional printing process. And I think seeing that in these images like that contrast, I think really augments everything.
Thanks.
Which is a really nice comment from Chris. Thank you, Chris. I like how the wood grain must really bridge the organic feeling you put into the project.
Yeah, thank you. And there's one of them too where the wood itself like chipped as I did it, and so it's in one of the prints. There's this one break in the frame, and it came from the wood and how the wood was kind of carved, and it's just an element of the material of it. And I was like, oh, should I redo this? And I was like, oh no, this is like really good. It speaks to the material of it. Yeah, I'll see if you can find it.
I'm looking.
No, you don't have to. I don't know how well it'll even show up by looking at it here. Oh, there it is.
Here you go. There it is. Perfect. Well, with that, we're at the top of the hour. So I think we'll wrap up for today.
You got glitchy on us, Whitney.
Thank you. We appreciate your time and your attention and your engagement with this incredible world that Travess has created. Please go to feralfile.com and explore the exhibition further. You can look more into these incredible woodblock prints, as well as explore the software itself, and also see who has merged their pieces of software into multi-levels. If you go in here. So we look forward to seeing your merges and the incredible that you create. Please share them on social media with us so we can engage with them and comment on them as well. And until then, Travess, do you want to wrap us up for the day?
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Thanks Feral File. Thanks to all my friends who were playtesters on this project. Thanks to the infinite patience of my family for this. Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, thanks to collectors. Thanks waiting to be signed. Like just everyone. It's been really excited to get to share this thing that I've been working on for so long. Yeah.
Well, that is it. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.